will go silent. Stand by for your final 30-second mark until airtime. Coming in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. 30 seconds until airtime on the LSU Sports Radio Network.
It's game week for LSU Fighting Tiger football. This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. This Saturday, the Tigers host the Aggies from Texas A&M inside Death Valley.
It's a competitive group. You know, they have a lot of pride. They're going to play hard. We just have to play smarter and cleaner. I'm not worried about the guys not wanting to play at their very best. They're going to play at their very best. They're still in it.
Coming up, head coach Brian Kelly sets the tone for the Tigers this week and updates all things LSU football. But first, with a preview of this week's matchup from inside the Capital One studio and legendary Tiger Stadium, here are former Tiger Gordy Rush and the voice of your Fighting Tigers, Chris Blair.
Good Monday morning, Tiger fans. Welcome in for the Brian Kelly Press Conference. The Tigers coming off a tough loss on the road, suffering their second loss again in SEC play. They will now move on, 5-2 on the year. At 500 in league action, at 2-2, they'll be back home, as we mentioned, against Texas A&M coming in this Saturday. Coming up at 12 noon, we'll head to football operations. Of course, Coach Brian Kelly will discuss the breakdown of Saturday's game and then the story moving forward as they get ready for a very talented Aggie team coming over here, one of the best, at least up to this point, that we've seen in Mike Elko's era. And Gordy Rush going back to Saturday is just a tough game. And, again, not to oversimplify things, but when you look at the final box score, if you were watching the game, go back and see some critical moments throughout the first, second, third, and fourth quarter. You will see there were opportunities to punch it in the end zone. And when all was said and done, Vanderbilt was able to do that. LSU missed on a couple of those opportunities, and they come up short 31-24. And again, not to try to oversimplify it, there's a lot that goes into it. I'm sure Coach will talk about that. But it comes down to this: 9 possessions for the Commodores, 4 touchdowns, a field goal. Did have a turnover on downs in the first half. Forced a punt, which we'll talk about late in the fourth quarter. And then, of course, they had the ball when the game ended. For LSU, 8 possessions in the game, 2 touchdowns, 3 field goals, a missed field goal, and 2 punts in that opportunity on Saturday. And again, Coach Kelly kind of mentioned it last week. He said it again on his coach's show. He talked about it after the game. They felt like they would have fewer possessions. And LSU, going into Saturday, was averaging 66 plays offensively per game. I think they came away with, 49, I believe, against Vanderbilt, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Close to that, right.
So, again, that's kind of where the game was won by Vanderbilt.
Yeah, 49 plays or 325 yards for LSU, where Vanderbilt 67 for 400 yards of total offense. Time of possession was 36.5 to 23.5, so almost 2-1 in time of possession. Look, first off, credit Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt played a clean football game. They didn't turn the football over. You mentioned it when they got in the red zone. They made good on their red zone trips down there. And then, as you go into football games, as you've mentioned, you have a identity to who you are, and that's what they wanted, to own the time of possession, and they were huge on third down. And Diego Pavia played an outstanding game. He had 17 carries for a net of 86 yards. He's 14 of 22 passing for 160. And while those numbers are never going to win a Heisman Trophy. I think what he brought to the table and the way that he affected the game was certainly quality of that sort of type of player of the week, right? I mean, not exactly what they needed him to do.
Yeah, when you look back at it, and I think we touched on it last week, the biggest concern that I had against a guy like Diego Pavia, and I think we saw it on display Saturday, is that LSU over the season had really done a good job against the quote-unquote dual-threat quarterback. But there's a major difference when you watch the game of Cade Klubnik and even Lenoris Sellers with all that he does rushing the football. And we kind of said, with Sellers, he kind of telegraphs when he's looking to throw and when he's going to run because he knows he's difficult to get down. Whereas Diego Pavia, no disrespect, I'm not saying he doesn't want to take a hit, but he's going to wait till the very last minute. He'll dance around. He will take, spin. He'll do everything, and he's got the ability to do so. And I think there were times where LSU had the opportunity to get it home, but credit Pavia. He was able to slip away, and not always to run, able to slip away and at least get positive yards sometimes with the arm. But I think the biggest concern coming out of how he was able to be as successful as you pointed out was that once he did decide to run, he was able to just take the middle of the field and do what he does best.
What's interesting is that in the first quarter, LSU really did a good job taking away the Vanderbilt run game. It was the passes to the tight ends, both Spence and Stowers. They had 8 receptions between the two of them for over a half of the yardage that what Pavia did. And so LSU had to adjust to getting out to cover the tight ends. I put the linebackers in particular in sort of limbo. They were in a run pass. And Vanderbilt, I think once LSU made those adjustments, Pavia did a great job of getting the ball to the running backs and then himself taking off. Linebackers had to drop and get in the pass coverage. It opened up some running lanes for their quarterback.
One of the things going into this matchup against Vanderbilt is it's a team that really relies on their defensive line. And they've done that all season long. Not necessarily a blitzing team, except sometimes they have an exotic package when they get 3rd and long, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 13. Then they'll dial that up. But for most of the day, even when LSU was on schedule, the inability to kind of protect Garrett, they were rushing 4 most of the day and able to get home occasionally with a delayed blitz. But there were times, even the big Xavier Thomas touchdown, that was Garrett doing a great job just to get enough space and enough time to drop the football off. Then Xavier did the rest. But that was a little bit of a concern because, again, we've seen a lot of teams go away from what they normally do to try to make LSU one-dimensional. Vandy didn't have to do that for most of the day.
They didn't do that, and I was really surprised. And through 3 quarters, they gave up a lot of big plays. The Tredez Green touchdown was on a pick play in which a defender, he was in man coverage and got picked off. That was LSU's first touchdown. And then they blitzed, and Nussmeier was able to get out of it. He got the ball to Thomas, who was able to make that big 50-yard play. There were some big plays that LSU was able to make, and what happened as the game wore on, and certainly Tyree Adams getting knocked out of the game as he was injured, and DJ Chester had to come fill in at left tackle. I think it was at that point of the game where the Vanderbilt pressure really did affect LSU in those last 2 series. After finally the defense stopped Vanderbilt, I think in those 2 series, LSU was a negative 10 yards in total offense. And and credit Vanderbilt. There was nothing on film. If you watched all of LSU's games, nobody really had pressured this Garrett Nussmeier, this offense, and gone after Nussmeier a little bit. And Vanderbilt did, and they got after him. And in the last 2 possessions, it really paid dividends.
Yeah, there with about 13:30 to go in the fourth quarter. Again, you had an early lead in the game. Then you're playing catch-up. Because of those opportunities, Vandy cashed in inside the red zone and outside of the red zone, for that matter, getting into the end zone. But you get the 51-yard run by Caden Durham. He's pulled down inside the 5. Suddenly your first down, golden goal. And then a little bit of mistakes. Right. You weren't able to line up. Looked like they were trying to line up quickly, get the play in. Then they had some substitution issues. They had to burn their first time out of the second half. Again, that would come to be big later on in the game. But the inability on that particular play, at that point down 10, 31-21, again, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But who knows what happens if suddenly it's a 3-point game with that much time remaining in the fourth quarter.
Huge momentum swing. You don't punch it in right there. That's a moral victory for Vanderbilt to stand up there, especially the way that they're moving the football there, for their defense to hold you when you get down to the 1-yard line, and just the way the things happened. It's just not what you want. Your LSU, that you have the big play and you have everything rolling for you, and that just goes out of the stadium when you're not able to convert it for a touchdown.
And again, it compounded after that. After having to burn that first time out, then you have the penalty, then you're backed up, and what suddenly should have been, first down goal to go around the 1 yard line is suddenly now at the 6, and they have to settle for the field goal. Again, they come up short by the final score of 31-24. And before we take a break, Gordy, one of the bigger concerns, obviously the loss is what's on everybody's mind, but you were without some key players, and that's part of it. It's next man up. You got to be able to do that. I like the depth overall for this LSU team that we've already seen on display this year, and more than likely we'll have to continue to see. But now you start to look towards this week and beyond. And how long are you going to be without some of these guys who are huge? I mean, I think Whit Weeks, again, his ability to make tackles, but what's also lost is him being the captain, getting everybody in the right position, making sure that all the fits are correct pre-snap, and suddenly you're losing that. And we don't really know. Maybe we'll find out more coming up at noon how long they're going to be without him.
Yeah, I don't know. Whit Weeks was in the boot for that football game, and comparatively. Jamari Butler was not in the boot. He was walking around, so it felt like he was probably in better shape to make it back for the A&M game than Weeks was for him to be walking out there in the boot. But no question, and then not having Weeks and the leadership on the field when you go through the adverse moments of a football game. And you're looking for those leaders, and I kept going. We talked about this during camp. It was Pyburn. It was Gooden, who was not on the football field. It was Weeks. Those were the emotional leaders out there, and two of those guys were not out there. Texas A&M they're big on the offensive and defensive line, and we'll talk about the Aggies next segment. So you're going to need as many bodies as possible, and certainly Weeks is a big part of that. You're down 2 defensive ends. With Relaford's out still in a sling. And so how many guys can they get back? And it's going to be interesting to see what Coach has to say here coming up at the press conference.
100%. This has been a team, again, going back to the depth that they had, that have been able to, at times, be able to fill in when some of those key players are out. But now you're at week number 8. You've got a top 5 team coming in, as you said, that are very physical at both lines of scrimmage. And how much longer you're going to be without those guys. And hopefully we get a very positive injury update if that information is available coming up around 12 noon. We'll take our first break. We come back. We'll find out what Gordy knows about Texas A&M and where he sees this matchup coming down to on Saturday. It'll be LSU, Texas A&M. I believe 6:49 is kickoff time, according to our TV friends. And we'll talk about that matchup after this break, right after this.
In Louisiana, we love our LSU Tigers. When the band strikes up those 4 iconic notes, the fans go wild. At Louisiana Blue, we're Tiger fans too. That's why we've teamed up with LSU Athletics to bring you the compassion of the cross and security of the shield, so you're free to wear your stripes and roar. Live Louisiana. We've got you. Louisiana Blue, Louisiana True.
Proud partner of LSU Athletics.
There was a time when a person's word was enough. A time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
Squeeze every ounce of life out of every day. Memorize every sunset, every face you love, and climb every obstacle until you can't go higher. With Louisiana Blue, you're free to soar because you've got the compassion of the cross, the security of the shield, and the comfort of blue behind you. Live Louisiana. We've got you. Louisiana Blue, Louisiana True.
Champions make plays on the field and in life. With LSU Online, you can keep your career moving, earn your degree, and still run your own game plan. Learn anytime from anywhere and take the next step toward your goal line. It's time to make your move, Tiger fans. Visit online.lsu.edu. LSU Online. Win where you are.
Coming up, Coach Kelly addresses the media on this week's preparation. This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Here again are Gordy and Chris.
This coming Saturday, it will be LSU and Texas A&M, a Saturday night in Death Valley. Again, Texas A&M top 5 team. Right now, the only undefeated team remaining in SEC play. They come off a wild one. They got by Arkansas up in Fayetteville, 45-42, in a game that certainly went back and forth and hung in the balance for the duration of that contest. But this is a team that you kind of talked about, Gordy. Big up front, both defensive and offensive lines. Marcel Reed, we know what he can do. He did it last year in a backup role, but now this is his offense, and he's another dual-threat quarterback. The good news is Blake Baker and company do know exactly what he can do, but you got to go find a way to scheme it up and control the damage that he brings. They were going to be without, we believe, Le'Veon Moss, who is a talented running back. Seems like he was playing when Manziel was quarterbacking there. He's been there forever. But he was banged up a couple of games ago, and they expect him to be out at the time a couple of weeks. So we'll wait and see maybe when their injury report comes out. But they're making up for it. They've got a talented sophomore running back that is filled in. And, again, not a lot of weaknesses when you look at this A&M team.
Well, I think that's been the story of this A&M team has been how the offense has evolved. Of course, we got Marcel Reed came on in relief and led A&M to victory against LSU. And then he had his ups and downs throughout the remainder of the season and last year. They started off a little sluggish. Well, it was UTSA and Utah State, but the last 3 games they've really put it together offensively. They're averaging 35 points per game. And I think the story, what's new about Texas A&M, because with Mike Elko, you're expecting a big offensive line, a physical offensive line. With a dual-threat quarterback, you're expecting them to run the football. But they went out in the transfer portal and got 2 outstanding receivers, Mario Craver and then KC Concepcion came from NC State. Respectively, they're averaging 95 yards and 71 yards per game, and Craver has 4 touchdowns and Concepcion has 6. So to go with that running game, they're able to stretch the field vertically. They've had a lot of big plays, and so this is a more balanced Texas A&M offense than they were with Reed in the back half of this year, and playing good football as they come into. And you look at their SEC slate. They beat Auburn 16-10. An impressive win at home against Mississippi State, 31-9, I believe, the week after State came off an upset of Arizona State, or a week or 2 after that. Florida, they separated from Florida, who's still stingy on defense, 34-17. They got themselves in the shootout against Arkansas and prevailed 45-42, and they were able to do that. And look, Bobby Petrino is very good at calling plays on offense. The Razorbacks gained 500 yards plus of total offense on Texas A&M. That's certainly something Mike Elko wasn't happy about, and something you don't see a whole lot of. But it's been the offense stepping up to match the level of what the defense has been under Mike Elko, and that's been a good story for these Aggies.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Elko, is going to be, with his defensive background, you expect him to be a tough defense, and it was interesting after the game. He didn't hold back. He basically said there was nothing, paraphrasing here, nothing even reminiscent of what a Texas A&M defense is supposed to look like in that 45-42 win. But real quickly, Marcel Reed, we talk about what he can do. We saw what he did last year running up and down the field in that win by A&M. But you mentioned those 2 receivers, and I think that's important because don't forget Reed can throw the ball. In fact, he's 7th in the league in SEC games and passing yards per game at 225. In 2nd in passing yards completion in the league, in league games against SEC defenses, with those receivers averaging just under 14 yards per completion.
Yeah, more balanced quarterback. He's up from the Nashville area, and I remember Kirk Herbstreit. We were talking about Reed because I believe Reed played at the school his kids were kids go to school as well. He said he can spin it. Don't let the speed fool you that this is more of a running quarterback. He can flat out spin it, and that's why they went to the portal. They got these 2 receivers, and you see much more balance than a year ago.
Well, again, expecting a capacity crowd. It should be electric, to say the least, Texas A&M coming in. But a very important game, and I think it's a more important game for LSU. You got 2 losses now. I think a lot of people still believe, rightly so, that in this league this year, there could be a team with 3 losses overall to get into the college football playoffs. So all of that is still on the table. But you've got this incredible team coming in at home. You've got an Arkansas team, as you said, with Coach Petrino, putting points on the board. They haven't had a ton of success wins and losses-wise yet, but LSU is struggling to score, and has all season long against FBS teams. They've yet to put up more than 24 points against an FBS opponent. And then you've got, again, an Arkansas team, then on the road to take on Alabama, Western Kentucky, and then another stingy defense in Oklahoma. So to me, it's kind of like the Tigers have their back against the wall, and this is the game. They got to put it all together.
No doubt. They've got to bounce back after this disappointing loss of Vanderbilt. You've got to hold serve at home. And I've talked about this all season long. There's no more any great teams in college football, and there's no more bad teams, right? Yeah. Everybody has resources. We just saw that last weekend with Vanderbilt. Impressive roster that they put together. They had 20 transfer players in there, and they were solid from top to bottom. That's a good SEC football team. Your focus has to be on this week. You have to hold serve on home, considering what's left, and you can't worry about what is left. And that's college football overall. There's upsets happening every week. To me, this is starting to feel like the NFL, where 10-6, Chris, gets you into the playoffs. And it's an adjustment for a lot of fan bases, a lot of people. And what we're used to seeing 12-0 and 11-1 and 10-2 is the only acceptable season in a lot of places. The reality is, a lot of people are thinking like that, and a lot of people have the resources to invest in that. And 9-3 and 8-4 are going to be a heck of a lot more common, and 9-3 might get you into the playoffs. We don't know. Last year, it did not get an SEC team in the playoff. It just seems everything's different this year. So you can't worry about what's next. You have to worry about this week, and that's the only one that matters.
Coming up, we'll head over to football operations right around 12 noon, where we are now. Coach Brian Kelly will be joining us in just a moment. Real quickly, Gordy, the interesting thing about this A&M defense, when I took a look at, again, just against SEC opponents with 4 games in league play, they're 7th in the league, allowing 118 yards per rush, which is not an enormous amount. But they're pretty good against the pass. 4th in the SEC, giving up 192 yards through the air. So, again, will there be an opportunity to get some running yards for LSU, and what the challenge will be for this receiving core and Garrett Nussmeier again? Yep. Because when you watch Texas A&M, the reason they're limiting passing attacks is not just on the back end of their defense. It's what they do up front as well.
They're elite. They've been elite in their front 7. And Mike Elko, whenever he's been, wherever he's been. At Duke was never known for being elite on defense. And, I remember a couple games. One they played against Notre Dame was a very low-scoring game. And that's his trademark, and that's what they're going to do. They have recruited some and gotten better in the secondary. They're more complete on the defensive side of the football. I haven't broken down the film against Arkansas. I get 500 yards is 500 yards, and Bobby Petrino is very good at calling football plays. As I'm interested to see what that looks like. Look, when you get to a game like this, it's a rivalry game like this, and you mentioned it, LSU is going to come out with their back against the wall. I'm interested to see the way that Garrett is going to respond and bounce back from last week.
Again, one of the big factors last week was third down efficiency. Vandy won that battle. A&M slightly better by about 10%. That'll be key in this one. Let's head to football operations. Here is head coach Brian Kelly.
Last week, I want to start with, and I think this is important, and our players felt the same way. We really appreciated the support that we got on the road. I mean, if we got into the stadium and our entire side was LSU Tigers, and that's appreciated. Like when you go into a visiting team, their field, and you're well represented like that. Now, I wish we could have sent them home happy with a victory, certainly, but. Those little things, mean a lot, and especially as our team is, battling, certainly disappointed in the way things went in the loss on Saturday. There's a lot of things you can point out in the game, but it really boils down to kind of what I talked about after the game. It really hasn't changed much after I've watched the film. We had 49 offensive plays, and we needed to be better in scoring zones. We settled for field goals. They got touchdowns. And that ultimately was the difference, other than the fact that, defensively, we needed to get off the field in certain situations. And, that's why the plays were, 49 to 67, 68. You almost had a 20-play differential between the two. But if you really want to take the big picture, I was pleased with a lot of things, but it's the outcomes. Our fan base wants positive outcomes, and I get that. There's nothing that brings a community together better than an LSU victory. And so we clearly understand that. I understand that. Our players, I'm proud of their resolve. I'm proud of going on the road against whether we like it or not, Indiana's number 2 in the country. Whether we like it or not, Vanderbilt's number 10 in the country. These are teams that have earned their rankings, and they're good football teams. They played exceedingly well. I give credit to Vanderbilt. They took care of the football. They have an outstanding quarterback who, on 3 occasions where we hit the call right on some nakeds, he made things happen. And so you got to give credit where credit's due in this situation as well. We're disappointed with the loss, don't get me wrong, and we want to do better for our fan base. We get that. But having said that, there were a lot of things that we can take away from the game that we need to build on. And that's where we are right now, is that we have a great opportunity this weekend in Tiger Stadium, to play the number 3 team in the country. That's exciting. And we believe the way we're moving, if we continue to get better on both sides of the ball, we're prepared to win the game. We believe we can win the game. So, I hope our fan base understands that we're disappointed. We are committed to working to getting better every single day. And we're excited about a great matchup this weekend in Tiger Stadium. Certainly, A&M, outstanding football team. When you look at them, they're defensively, they've got some outstanding players. The linebacker York is outstanding. I loved him last year, 21. He's all over the field, instinctive. Howell leads the SEC in sacks. He's somebody that you have to know where he is all the time and appropriately plan for him. Offensively, Marcel Reed is doing an incredible job at the quarterback position, taking that over. They've got outstanding backs in Owens and Moss, and very deep and talented with Craver and Concepcion. Outstanding receivers that can do a lot of things with the ball as well. So, very talented team. I think it would be one of the better offensive lines, if not the best offensive line we're going to see this year. But I think overall, our team is excited about this opportunity, and we're going to play well, and we're going to need to beat the number 3 team in the country. So with that, we'll open up to questions.
Coach, you talked about just the lack of execution in those goal line situations. Do you feel like after going back and watching the film, this is an execution thing, or is it more of a mentality/attitude when you get inside the 5-yard line?
Well, which one do you want me to bring up? I can bring up the one where we have a false start penalty, or we have a wide open touchdown. We've seen that happen so many times in this game. Unfortunately, it was a timely error in that situation, that caused us. Cost us, 4 points in that situation, right? I think in each one of them was a little bit different. I think if we had to impact, another third down situation where it was all-out blitz, that, we could have certainly tapped down the routes and gotten the ball out a little bit quicker. But there's no major issues as much as at that time, at that crucial time with 49 plays, they're magnified if there's any errors at all. And that's what this game came down to. And I mentioned it many times. It's like playing a triple option team. You don't get many possessions. We had 5 possessions going into the fourth quarter. And so when you have limited possessions, those errors are magnified by 10.
Coach, I've heard some former players and others say there's a lack of physicality on this football team, in particular on the offensive side of the ball. Are you seeing that?
Well, I think we need to be more physical. I think there's always the need for physicality, right? How you play this game really is about who you are. You know, football is a game of violent collisions, and certainly from an offensive line standpoint, everybody's going to look towards the physicality there on the offensive line. Those are the best 5 guys we got out there. If we had, another group, we'd certainly play them as well. So, everybody, is going to look at this and has their opinions, and I respect everybody's opinion. But there's no doubt that anytime you evaluate your football team, the first thing you're going to look for is physicality.
Coach, you mentioned Indiana being number 2, Vanderbilt maybe being number 10. Does that really go to show how much NIL in the portal really opens up opportunities for schools that usually aren't in those positions to get into those positions?
Well, Texas Tech, right? I mean, they had a tough loss, but they were a top 10 team as well. Look, I don't think that I'm saying anything that's different than what's being talked about throughout the country. Look, it's a competitive scenario each and every week. Look at the SEC last week. Were there any blowouts? I mean, I don't know that there were. I mean, Texas and Kentucky went to overtime. Arkansas put up over 40 points. Georgia, Ole Miss was a track meet. Auburn, I think, goes to overtime as well. I mean, it's a tough league. It's competitive each and every week. There's no layups. And so why is that? Well, there's an investment, and that investment piece is revenue sharing. And so you can build your roster through that. It's not just about, well, I want to go where the team always wins or that's got a great tradition. Teams that are building their tradition are building it with, certainly the ability to help their student athletes as well. So that's part of it. But, still player development is important. Getting better each and every week and having the best version of your football team is important as well. I wouldn't stand up here and say, hey, all these teams are good because they got money. That's disingenuous, right? But it does play into it. There's no doubt about it. And I think we see that within the SEC.
Coach, from a self-evaluation standpoint, what do you think the one thing or the first thing is that needs to be addressed or fixed to kind of get this thing turned around and win on Saturday and also moving forward?
Well, I think we've been doing it. I mean, look, we want positive outcomes just like our fan base wants, right? But our last 9 quarters of offense have been trending to where we need to be, right? We're running the football with effectiveness. We're targeting the receivers that need to. We got to get Aaron Anderson probably involved a little bit more now that he's healthy. He's a big play guy. And then defensively, we need to continue to play like we have played in the first half. And if we do that, we get both sides of the ball playing complementary football. I think I've said it more than once, that we haven't played that complementary football where both sides are hitting on all cylinders. We just haven't hit that point yet. So we'll continue to prepare our football team, work on the things that can help us get to that level. And it's an ongoing process that, when every day is a self-evaluation of what I'm doing, what our players are doing, what our coaches are doing. And we're taking all those hours to make sure we do that.
Can you confirm multiple reports that Tyree Adams will be out for this week? And if so, what do you do at left tackle?
Yeah, he'll be out this week. DJ Chester will be over there. He's our most experienced guy. We'll give Kyrus Kern some reps out there as well and see how that goes during the week.
Coach, I know y'all track everything. When y'all come out of timeout, do you know what your success rate is on that next play?
No, we don't track that. If you have it, I'll take the numbers.
It seems like it's not very good, but I don't know if that's so.
Okay. I don't have that analytic, and it's something that I'm sure that if I ask our guys to dig deep, I can get you the answer.
Coach, right here.
Yeah.
While we're on the injuries, Whit Weeks, Bernard Gooden, Jamari Butler, how are they doing, and what do you think their status is?
I think when we present our report, I think you'll get a clearer look at that, and I think that goes out tomorrow, Wednesday. So we'll get a better report on that on Wednesday.
And we noticed we haven't seen Ashton Stamps or Jordan Gilbert on the field in quite a while. Is there anything going on with either of them?
Well, we're trying to protect them, both of them. They both have played in 3 games. So if we can, in fact, protect their year, we would try to. This would be a week where they could play their 4th game and still, maintain eligibility.
Brian, you've talked about the fewer plays that you have. There's obviously a thin margin for error with this team on offense. How much, I guess, then does it become important for you to really strip down what you're doing, who's calling it, the installation of those plays from the top down? Is that something that would benefit a team like this?
Yeah, we started doing that about 3 weeks ago. I think right after the Ole Miss game, I talked to Coach Sloan and said, and Coach Hankton, look, we need to shorten this inventory and be better at the things that have been highly efficient for us. So I think we went into that process about 3 weeks ago through the bye week, and I think it's proved to be effective for us. So, I would agree with you, and I think we've shown that, offensively, that's where we're heading.
There hasn't been a 2-loss SEC champion since, I think, LSU in 2007. Did your conversation about goals for your team change now that you've got your second conference loss?
No. What we've talked about is the excitement of this opportunity that we have this week to go 1-0, and that 1-0 is against the number 3 ranked team in the country. So, look, this is about the history and tradition of LSU football. You get these matchups at home; they're exciting, and we're looking forward to just the focus on playing our best when our best is needed against a great opponent in A&M in Tiger Stadium.
Coach Harlenberry had a good game, kind of season high in carries and yards, everything like that. What have you seen from him from a development standpoint throughout his freshman year?
Yeah, I think he's coming along the way we'd expect a true freshman, to come along. I think he's earned more and more trust as the season has gone on. He's had more carries, has been involved in pass situations, pass protections, done a nice job there. So I think he's right on track in terms of where he's going and influencing, the football game as he did this past Saturday.
We saw Karius at left tackles, and some in the spring, a little bit early in the fall. What do you need to see from him to kind of make that big push with DJ? And then just Solomon Thomas, what's maybe an update on how he's doing from his injury?
Solomon's a little bit behind. I mean, conditioning-wise, being involved in things, he's just ramping up really from a long layoff. But as it relates to Karius, we're in a situation now where, we've got a matchup this weekend against a veteran team and, a great pass rusher, certainly. And Karius is coming on. But to throw a true freshman in there, I don't want to put him in that situation. I could see him playing, but I prefer to play a guy that's had a lot of experience at that position. And knowing that whoever's at that position with number 9, you've got to help. you got to get somebody that chips. You got to put a tight end over there, elongate the pocket. You've got to do a lot of things in the pass game to help whoever's playing over there.
Coach, Garrett Nussmeier obviously loves LSU. He wants to do well. Seemed like he was very...
Everybody that's here wants to do well and loves LSU.
He seemed like he was very upset at the end of the game in the post-game interviews and so forth. What can you do as a head coach talking to him to kind of, obviously winning and throwing touchdowns, but get some of his joy back and playing the game?
Well, look, they put so much time and effort. And look, I recognize everybody's angst. I mean, my meal doesn't taste good. I'm not in a great mood. I mean, I'm not happy. I think he's part of the entire group, Jacques, that nobody's happy with the prep. We've put so much preparation time and to come through in those situations. The guys are angry and they're frustrated. And so we've got to be able to turn that into allowing them to go and play this game fast and free and physical and do that when it matters most. And I think we've already kind of touched upon a number of different times where the first question was, red zone efficiency, if we're a little bit better there. We had 3 situations where we were blitzing into a naked boot and we didn't come up with the sack. I mean, we got to be better there. So it's these little things that we've got to be better at so everybody feels a little bit better at the end of the day.
Billy Napier was fired on Sunday. I think it's 11 coaches now. Maybe do you have a thought on Billy being fired and what seems to be a growing trend in college football of letting coaches go earlier?
I've been 35 years in this business, 35. And, it's ever-changing. The stakes are high. The passion is great. I don't know that it surprises me, but look, it's the nature of the business that we're in. It's like I said earlier, it brings communities together. It brings states together. It brings so much hope, right? And so when there's that much at stake, things like that do occur. But I got to be honest with you, I can't take time to think about those things. I have to think about not making mistakes in the red zone and making sure that we do a good job staying on the upfield shoulder of the quarterback when we blitz off the edge into a naked boot. I got to think about those things and helping our coaches keep coaching and teaching that. And so I'm not trying to play off your question, but the reality of it is that if I take a global view on all these things all day, I wouldn't get my job done. And some are saying that I'm not getting it done now. I get that, right? And I get the criticism that comes with that. But we are working hard every single day to get our football team better. Yeah, every institution has their own reasons. I don't know, certainly what the reasons were. I like him as a colleague. I think he's professional. I think he's smart. But each institution has their own reasons for why they make those decisions, and I'm not privy to them.
Brian, I know you and Austin are on all the comms. Is there any advantage to getting you involved in game day play calling, or does that muddy the waters and the real work is done Sunday through Friday?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And for me, I can tell you that my involvement is much more in the game plan preparation. Play calling is an art and a science. It's both, right? And if you start getting involved in that too much, it does, in my opinion, over my career, it's not the best thing. Now I can veto things, and I do have suggestions, and I think that those are things that I'll continue to have. Believe me, I'm on both sides of the ball in special teams. I'm hearing it, listening to it. I have veto power, and I think from my perspective, that's the best place for me.
I don't want to put words into your mouth, but earlier in the season you did mention with DJ Chester moving at different positions, maybe it was a little bit unfair to his development, having to learn so many different things. You mentioning earlier he's going to be at left tackle. Is that more of just a, like you mentioned, experience? Is there options elsewhere? I mean, I guess just in terms of left tackle with DJ Chester, is that just you feel like the best fit for him right now?
Well, that's the best fit for us as 5, for the 5 guys that we're going to put out there. That's our best situation. Moving Josh over there is not going to do it for us. DJ's played a full game there at tackle already this year. As you know, he played the entire Florida game. Based upon that, and he virtually played the entire game against Vanderbilt, other than the first 12 plays. He had one stumble where his foot got caught in the ground on the turf, and we had a sack that was given up. But by and large, he did what was expected of him. And I have confidence that he can go out there and do the job. Like I said, they've got an outstanding pass rusher over there. 9 or 50 is pretty good, too. We'll have to help. We'll have to do some things to get the ball out quickly. But I feel like if we do that, we've got a guy that's played a lot of football.
You mentioned those naked boots a couple of times facing Marcel Reed this week. I'm just curious, what could you have done in that situation with the corner coverage that you have and it being really good this year? I guess, are safeties more involved in that situation, or is it simply that guy's got to get home?
Well, there were 2 different situations. Twice we blitzed the corner, and the corner came too shallow underneath. We made the correction. We blitzed him again. He did a nice job of staying on the upfield shoulder. The other time we blitzed an outside backer and they were too shallow. So, each one of them, it's not one player. Like if it was one player, we'd put him on the bench. We just need to be more consistent across the board, and not just on offense, but defense as well.
I guess I have another defensive question for you, too. Without Witt and Bernard on the field this past weekend, do you feel like the unit as a whole missed a little bit of that speed, instinct, and just energy that they bring, game to game? And if they can't go this weekend, how do you, within the next 5 days, how do you sort of get some of that back?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we felt like maybe we lost a little bit of that energy that had been apparent with our group. So you can imagine that's the first thing that I addressed on Sunday. How if they don't play, where is it coming from? We had a couple of guys come and speak to the team right after the game from the defensive side of the ball, speaking on that in particular. So they're aware of it. We know that we have to have that kind of energy on defense to play the kind of defense we need to play. All right, thank you.
Coach Brian Kelly with this week's press conference as LSU gets ready to take on the Aggies of Texas A&M coming up Saturday, again with kickoff set for 6:49 inside Tiger Stadium. We'll get some final news and notes and wrap it up after this.
What a matchup we've got, folks. Just nonstop action. The energy is electric and the fans are all in. An intense game like this calls for a Coca-Cola. Crisp and refreshing. That's a game changer. Yeah, that taste scores every time. And just like that, they're back at it. Passionate fans and an ice-cold Coca-Cola. Now that's a winning combo. No matter the team, no matter the sport, everyone knows fan work is thirsty work. Enjoy a Coca-Cola.
There was a time when a person's word was enough. A time when a handshake meant something, and integrity really mattered. For over 70 years, the values of Farm Bureau Insurance have been rooted in hard work, faith, and family. In that time, we've seen the world change in many ways. What hasn't wavered is Farm Bureau Insurance's commitment to protect our customers' way of life and serve the communities in which they live when they need us most. You deserve more. You deserve a promise. Learn more at lafarmbureau.com.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
For him, it wasn't the cancer that almost took his life. It was an infection his body wasn't strong enough to fight. Antibiotic resistance is a global crisis, targeting those who are already vulnerable and claiming over 1 million lives each year. But an LSU discovery is changing the game. Our unique biotech starves bacteria, stops growth, and gives the body a chance to heal. Because behind every breakthrough is a life worth saving.
That's a wrap on this week's Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. For last-minute news and notes, once again, here is Chris Blair.
Coach Brian Kelly with this week's press conference. Coming up on Thursday, we'll get a chance to visit with him at TJ Ribs for the Brian Kelly Show, presented by Our Lady of the Lake Health. It'll all start at 7 o'clock on Thursday. Then Saturday, LSU, Texas A&M. Tigers trying to get back to their winning ways, keep all of their goals in front of them. Airtime will begin at 4:45 with LSU Game Day. Hunt Palmer, Marlon Favorite, Brandon Taylor. I'll hand it off to Jacob Hester, Gordy Rush, myself for the kickoff at 6:49 between LSU and Texas A&M. That'll wrap things up for this week. We hope you'll join us again next Monday for the Brian Kelly Press Conference. For Gordy Rush and for you joining us. Thank you again, and until next time. For the Brian Kelly Press Conference.
This has been the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. For the very latest on LSU Fighting Tiger football, follow the Tigers on social at LSU Football and at LSUsports.net.